Continuing the author's previous book, Seven Faces of Darkness, Uncle Setnakt's essential guide to the left-hand path provides an unmatched introduction to left-hand path philosophy. Packed with practical exercises and coherent explications, the book takes the reader on a quest for sovereignty and self-empowerment. Through this, it helps understand fundamental principles of both magic and life. Right off the bat, the book clarifies the kinds of people it is intended for. Not fearing hard work, rigorous thought, the future, and neither themselves, those genuine seekers strive to integrate philosophy and magic and approach life obtaining sovereignty. Cover. Simple yet eye-catching, the beautiful cover immediately communicates four key symbols. Found in the top right corner and sometimes associated with Timothy Leary's 8-circuit model, the first is of chaos magic. Influenced by Austin Osman's pair and popularized by Peter J. Carroll, chaos magic is a more modern method prioritizing practicing and results versus memorizing sophisticated concepts. Also called success or results-based, chaos magic doesn't recognize an absolute truth. Instead, it borrows from various systems, employing the belief as a primary tool. Underneath on the same site appears the essential to Gurdjieff's cosmology, an diagram. This symbol is a powerful tool through which one not simply becomes more familiar with oneself, but also finds one's place in the universe, learning more about the things belonging to one's true will. That being by revealing one's personality type and true self. Placed in the left upper corner is the symbol of the Temple of Set, representing the gift of Set, individuality, and the principle of isolate intelligence. This substantially differs from the standard Wiccan and magical pentagrams. Unlike those, its rays do not touch the circle. According to James Kirby, who besides an incredible artist, was a magician of this nature, the symbol also displays that the magic and transformation are all internal, not touching the outer world. Meditating on that made me think that they also cannot be touched by the outer world. Last but not least, the symbol in the lower right represents the black flame, i.e. the individual self-aware, self-directed consciousness. The same also stands for the wall of the trapezoid and angular magic, which apparently deals with angular time. The nature and goals of the left-hand path. Introducing the left-hand path, this chapter discerns the four types of rulership to achieve. While that might happen simultaneously, it usually does in the following order. 1. Rulership of the inner world. 2. Rulership of the outer world. 3. Royal power in the outer world. And 4. Royal power in the inner world. Rulership of the inner world. Page 3. Quote. The basis of the left-hand path is that humans are but machines, but may in potential become gods. The first aspect that a human has to change is their inner world. They have been taught, or rather acquired, a series of randomly assorted thoughts, notions and behavior, most of which either actively hinder them, or at best lull them into a sleep-like state. These stultifying forces mainly group themselves into forces that oppose the body, the mind, the emotions and the will. Each of these must be overcome. Unquote. Sucking the life out of a person and damaging the body, those forces include various drugs, junk food, blue light, environmental contamination, sedentary living, etc. After identifying those, the student has the critical task of substituting them with a health-promoting and self-empowering diet and lifestyle. Having that aligned with one's aspirations, the initiate must repeat the procedure with his or her informational diet. This boils down to two things. A. Eliminating junk information from newspapers, TV, and the internet, which supposedly includes social media, and B. Adding content to challenge one's current thinking. Here I believe Robert Anton Wilson fans will definitely recognize this as very similar to an exercise outlined in Prometheus Rising, Chapter 6, the time-binding semantic circuit. While that's deliberately challenging yourself with materials opposing your beliefs, there is a thing both Webb and Wilson recommend to all occult and paranormal enthusiasts. That is reading the Skeptical Inquirer for a period of time. I also firmly believe all these instructions greatly complement the defined by Napoleon Hill as mastering the three basic appetites and obtaining self-mastery, or getting your nefesh or animal soul under control in more Kabbalistic terms. And that's something with which my book Omad Gains can greatly help. Webb explains that by gradually mastering your emotions and thoughts in this manner, you become capable of having specific ones at your will. You also prepare to adopt the antinomian stance, liberating yourself from worshipping various cultural norms, brand logos, and obedience symbol systems. Once freed from all those, you ought to form your own cosmogony. and this is achieved by letting your no longer wrecked emotions, body and mind create an actually sense-making picture of the universe. Rulership of the outer world. Conveying the integral formula that changing the objective reality or the outer world is only possible after changing your subjective reality or inner world, this section provokes to dig deep within, determining what you really like and is good for you. Page 4, quote, "Knowing what we like is a tougher question than most people realize. Our likes have been pre-packaged and sold to us for many years. We are taught to feel anxiety if our likes are different from those of our neighbors. Discovering what one likes, standing up for one's right to like it and pursuing that desire is the most sacred task in this second phase of initiation." Unquote. Through this, the book inspires the readers to face the dilemma of what they are willing to sacrifice to obtain the desired freedom and way of living. Being perfectly transparent about your desired future reveals the price you have to pay now in order to eventually have it. Also included is a refreshing perspective on a notion found in many self-help classics, namely that deliberately embarking on reasonably challenging tasks is a sacred and magical act in and of its own. Page 5, quote, "The secret to sacrifice of self to self is a magical one. Beyond the obvious rational truth that hard work and preparation pay off, there is a subtle magical truth. Consciously putting yourself in difficult situations to obtain magical force of being. If you really want the force, you must do very difficult things. The simple act of doing what is hard merely to gain power over yourself creates a true power." Unquote. Royal power in the outer world. Here the chapter communicates that to never stop improving oneself, one should help others achieve the same. Being the third task, this is triggered by two innate human desires, somewhat weak and vain. The first is that to show off. The second is because of compassion and caring for others. Properly understood, this couple could be a source of great pleasure, aiding in becoming a more sovereign being. It also helps to be surrounded by people with more equal intellectual abilities. Next, the section explains how blending, balancing, and reconciling those desires with the previously obtained wisdom increases magnetic power, furthering one's initiation. Page 7, quote, "By initiating others, self-initiation is furthered both by articulation and seeing whether or not one's theories work in the world. The magical name for this state is the practice of alchemy." Unquote. Royal power in the inner world. By stimulating one's own talents and improvement through learning, growing, and teaching, one inevitably faces the defined by the book as outward-directed fears. Those are the ones of want, violence, and abandonment. This brings the necessity for dealing with the still remaining inward-directed fears. Enumerating 4, those limit sovereignty by paralyzing actions and altering one's life. Inward-directed fears. The first is that of unknown impulse or imp of the perverse. Overcoming it transforms the perception of all seemingly haphazard and perhaps meaningless coincidences. Then the person begins recognizing them as somewhat divinely orchestrated synchronicities and a source of great mystery and being. The second fear is that of the future. Making one's master of one's destiny, conquering this breaks the grip of one's own self-hypnosis/cognitive dissonance. Extremely challenging, when accomplished, this task reveals something very important. Namely, that the future isn't just unknown, but also the great darkness from which all things can manifest. And this partially reminds me of the Thelemic goddess Nuit, and perhaps of the sphere of Binah of the Kabbalistic tree of life. The third fear is that of wasted time. Utilizing the formerly accumulated sovereignty, the person learns two crucial lessons. 1. It really isn't that much about finding the right thing to do, but a lot more about having the proper attitude toward anything. And 2. Unconditional self-love and forgiveness are absolutely essential when looking and moving into the future. Page 8, quote, "The experiences of the three types of sovereignty gained so far must be used now to learn the life lesson that if you continue to act with an initiatory attitude, all life experiences can be used in the quest for sovereignty. The choice is not finding the right thing to do, but finding the right attitude that informs your actions." Unquote. Last on this list comes the fear of the unverifiable. Being the quest of sovereignty's fourth stage and reachable only after accomplishing the former three, achieving this unlocks a new level of clarity, not by an external force, but by one's own inner voice. Page 8, quote, "Unlike a right-hand path prophet who must imagine that he hears a voice in a burning bush, we hear our own voice explaining our lives to us." Unquote. Proceeding further, the book reveals that those having this level of development are regarded as the true Black Order. Through their work, such exceptional individuals created historical conditions, bringing some of humanity's greatest virtues: the nature of the self and the cosmos, the surface level. Next, Chapter 1 explains the 4 levels of dynamism of both the self and the cosmos. Symbolized by the enneagram, the first is the surface level. Providing freedom, this one encompasses all activities in the mundane / here and now world. From totally inconsequential, those could be crucial and possibly detrimental / fatal, causing your life. Affecting the surface level is achieved via the Awaken See Act formula, which introduces a notion that's basic to Kabbalistic and Gurdjieff's teachings. Page 9, quote, "The first part of the formula, Awaken, assumes 2 things. 1. That I have fallen asleep and need to refocus my mind, body and soul. 2. That since the subjective universe has no location in time and space, any moment and any place can be a launching pad both to and from it. C assumes that I don't really know what is going on and that surface appearances are misleading, i.e., the smiling man from the insurance company isn't really interested in my well-being. The third term act means that I must, in my quest for sovereignty, do something." Unquote. Providing energy, the macrocosmic surface level is only those aspects of the objective reality interacting with you at a specific moment. It's represented by a triangle touching the inner side of a circle, and the author regards it as the training facility for exercising and getting stronger. Though they are different, since dealing with the physical, I believe this can be seen as partially corresponding to the Kabbalistic world of Asaya. The medial level. Most subjected to programming and symbolized by the Jungian mandala, the second is the medial level. Containing goals, wishes, desires, habits, etc., this one provides context. It's also where one's notions, delusions and shoots are held. Working on it is possible through self-knowledge and magic. The first clarifies your talents, limitations, genetic predispositions, etc., supplying a clear perspective of who you are. The second, magic, has various applications. While that includes forming new habits, breaking free from others to be self-destructive, obtaining resources and information, the most important is changing your perception. And here, the author includes a wisdom gem to meditate on, not just for magic, but for life in general. Pages 9 and 10, quote, "Magical happiness is not a mere gratification, it is that which engages the greatest parts of your being. It is not the result of indulgence, which is the state granted by those things with which we can temporarily gain union. Magical happiness is the state of knowing who you are by what has made you happy." Unquote. Represented by the 8-rate Chaos Magic Sigil, the external medial level grants the student various artistic, political and social allies. Commonly regarded as the world soul or zeitgeist, it encompasses historical forces, different thought systems, semi-conscious remnants, advertising and herd prejudices. Permanently in conflict, those forces enter one's mind as hypnosis. Once freed from that, the student realizes a vitally important piece of truth some might recognize from the author's appearances in podcasts, namely that those forces are neutral. Besides being harmful, they can also work to one's own advantage, and in my humble opinion, they can supply inspiration and ideas. And I believe the medial level partly corresponds to the Kabbalistic world of Yetzirah. The core level. Symbolized by the surrounded with a circle inverse pentagram, the core is the third level of dynamism. Precisely what makes a person unique is not directly observable despite its presence in the cosmos. Providing individuality, the same is regarded as the self-unchangeable part and absolute pattern for potential. The development of the core level is achieved via the methods of the left-hand path. Giving the model of divine independence and individuality, the core level of the cosmos is the ultimate source of patterns and potentialities. For this, I think it could be seen as having some of the characteristics of the Thelemic goddess Nuit, especially if we consider that Set is a son of hers. Based on culture and context, the cosmic core level is represented differently, and through this, the author elegantly outlines what's likely the best introduction to the Prince of Darkness. Page 12, quote, "The symbol of the Prince of Darkness is culturally determined. In a society ruled by the right-hand path paradigms, the Prince of Darkness is the rebel against cosmic injustice, Satan. In a society where the release of energy from dissipating patterns is revered yet feared, it is Shiva. In a society that stresses the role of the left-hand path magician as a culture hero, it will be supreme god of the pantheon like Odin or Tezcatlipoca. In a society where there is no central paradigm but many competing at the same time, it will be said, the god against gods. Unquote. The daemonic level. Directly interacting with cosmic forces and entities, the daemonic is the fourth level of dynamism. Having access to data and information none of the other parts has, the daemonic self corresponds to what's commonly regarded as Holy Guardian Angel / AGA and the Self and Neshama in Jungian and Kabbalistic terms. Symbolized by a mirror, this part of the soul provides magic. Arising from past formulas for what has worked and how, the external daemonic level is represented by a scroll. As said in the book, it's the sum total of all magical activity that shaped the world how we see it today. This includes the workings of John Dee and Crowley's influence on hippie culture. Somewhat similar to the Kabbalistic worlds, depicting the segments of one's soul and universes / deities parts, the four levels of dynamism explain the totality of the human being and the cosmos itself. And though not entirely corresponding, both systems aim to reconcile all those aspects within the practitioner. By achieving this equilibration, one can actually change the external world via thoughts or Hermes Trismegistus rule, as above so below, as within so without. Page 11, quote, each of these parts must be awakened, its subcomponents harmonized, its place in the personal ecology controlled and regulated. Each of these parts is fed by and feeds the other parts. By changing the four levels of yourself, the microcosm, the cosmos may be affected by resonance. By studying the four levels of yourself, you may learn about the four levels of the cosmos, and by studying the levels of the cosmos, you may learn about yourself. Unquote. Showing how to look at outstanding magical achievements, this section also gives practical instructions on working with each of those realms, and then it ends by revealing what joins all them together. Page 13, quote, these 8 levels of being, 4 internal and 4 external, are joined together by the act of perception. This process requires not merely looking at things, but preparing yourself to see them, which may mean education or getting rid of emotional baggage or learning occult techniques. Perception beckons energy from the outer realms and directs it into the inner realms. It is the source of nourishment and it improves by practice and the removal of delusion. It becomes the basis for unifying the self in such a manner that coherent afterlife states are possible. Unquote. Knowing that as young, Don Webb was influenced by Carlos Castaneda, I feel this significantly adds to a piece of wisdom found in Separate Reality. Quote, looking referred to the ordinary way in which we are accustomed to perceiving the world, while seeing entailed a very complex process by virtue of which a man of knowledge allegedly perceives the essence of the things of the world. Unquote. Psychology of initiation. After initiation's 7-stage self-change process involving discovery and developing the self's dormant aspects, this section addresses the vices and the virtues on the path. 7 in number, the first are narcissism, hubris, forgetfulness of orthodoxies, despair, attachment to another's thoughts, obsession with magic, and emotional servitude. Also 7, the virtues encompass magical curiosity, quantifiable pride, sense of humor, openness, moderation, synthesis and cunning. And then the book goes through its section on magic's nature. Nature and types of magic. Page 19, quote, magic consists of pulling things from the darkness into the light. Darkness is the realm of potential existence. It may be understood as the future, the repressed, the hidden, or the forbidden. Magic is the art or science of causing change in the microcosm, so the proportionate change may occur in the macrocosm depending on the precision and passion of the magician. Unquote. Perfectly resonating with some of the set on the 8 levels of existence and psychology of initiation, this proceeds by discerning several types of magic. Metacommunication. Being the first, metacommunication is virtually any sending of a message that's more than what it seems. The same is used for several purposes. 1. To achieve a goal that normal communication channels won't allow us. 2. To enchant our lives. 3. To lessen the effects of metacommunication on us. And 4. To produce internal friction and awareness of purpose. Sorcery. The second type of magic the book recognizes is sorcery, or, quote, the manipulation of words and matter to effect change in this world. Unquote. Here 2 things appear handy. The first is having native talent. The second, studying chaos theory to learn why things with spells can go really bad, real quick. Practical instructions on sigil construction are also covered. What I find as also worth mentioning is Don Webb's definition of native talent. Page 20, quote, native talent is the expression of your daimonic self. If you ever had a quote-unquote miracle that pulled you out of a bad situation, you have a talent for sorcery. Unquote. Now, to me this definitely brings clarity to why it's often said that talented artists and writers communicate with their demonic selves or AGAs via their work. Divination. The third type of magic is divination. Along with explaining some purposes of this method, Webb offers tools for its practice, among those being Crowley's Thoth deck, the runes and the Ogham. Acknowledging that most people use tarot, the author presents a coherent procedure to utilize whenever doing a reading. Besides somewhat common to most practitioner stuff, that encompasses a beautiful invocation of one's future self, which I believe anyone could benefit from by incorporating in their workings. Initiation. The fourth type of magic is initiatory. Creating or preserving a specific perception, the same is regarded as the secret of the Magi. Page 26, quote, "Initiatory magic is changing oneself to give the desired traits a foothold in the darkness of the psyche. It is like planting a seed." Unquote. After defining the two kinds of initiatory magic, Webb eloquently advises a sober and healthy approach toward each. Related to social events like weddings, funerals, graduation, etc., the first is external. That's how society, culture and family programmed one's perception from the moment of one's birth. Rather than suggesting to despise and deny all that, the author offers meticulously availing off of it. And how to do it is by 1. Taking control over your conduct, eradicating any hindering your growth aspects, and 2. Reinforcing the stuff appropriate for the sovereign being you are becoming. A thing I personally suggest though is meditating on this segment while also examining the fourth social-moral circuit in Prometheus Rising. Inner directed, the second kind of initiatory magic is internal. Either performed by a group or by oneself, this changes perception on one or more micro and rarely microcosmic dynamism levels. It's also the kind of work to be taken with great caution and utmost seriousness. Page 26, quote, "Internal initiatory magic needs to be viewed as very serious and productive of unknown consequences." Unquote. Now, I really don't know about you, but to me this definitely adds a layer of understanding to some examples I know from other occult authors. The first is from one Milo Duquette regarding Hermetic Kabbalah and magic. In his Fourth Ward 148 podcast interview, he notes that those really aren't a drug you just take and have identical results with everyone else. The second is from the same podcast and Sandra Tabata and Chick Cicero. The couple shares that it wasn't a single initiation they stopped to prevent something bad from happening. And the third is from Regardi's Ceremonial Magic, mainly where he talks about numerous candidates getting a mental breakdown in the middle of their initiation. Supposedly, this also reminds us of Damien Echo's second book, particularly where he explains why crossing the abyss probably isn't for everyone in this life. Later, Chapter 1 also gives some eye-opening insights into the opportunities offered by the current age and how to fully avail of them. Lastly, it finishes with a small passage to distinct the left and the right-hand paths, their noticeable similarities, and how religions like Taoism and Telema appear beyond that paradigm. Chapter 2. Practice. Full of nothing but practical exercises, these 14 pages outline 19 methods to maintain self-awareness and promote your development. Diary. Besides the more common, i.e. magical workings and dreams, this should also include your most considerable virtues and talents, weaknesses, hunches, synchronicities, breakthroughs, and your material career and magical goals. Taking care of your body. Stressing the removal of auto-poisoning activities while telling that addictions must die, the second method is all about optimizing your body. Besides proper nutrition, enough training, and adequate rest, this encompasses researching hereditary weaknesses and meditating on your life plans. Master a magical system. Extremely important, the third is a thing some people tend to underestimate or neglect. That's mastering an actual magical system. Apart from defining the segments of this, Webb also advises going with one that really resonates with yourself. Page 34, quote, "If you're a wild man, biker dude, don't warn about the Golden Dawn. If your favorite magical chamber is your library with a roaring fire beside you, don't investigate shamanism." Unquote. Whatever the system, the least this gives you is the ability to test yourself against something. Plus, you have an indispensable skill set when later creating your own system. Create your own system. Page 34, quote, "All your life you have certain things that worked your soul. They are yours and yours alone." Unquote. Advising to feed off the stuff that first inspired your occult studies, this method is all about building your own rituals, meditations, etc. That system you analyze through anthropology and further fine-tune its values, trends, weaknesses and strengths. Besides priceless information about your core self, this also unfolds hidden truths and mysteries to only convey to a selected few. Write a magical autobiography. This is about creating 2 books/journals. Called Book of Freedom and written early on the path, the first hours coming to terms with your past. Besides utilizing a practice similar to some Stoic meditations, this shows how to remove guilt because of people and things you've done wrong. The second book is that of secrets. The same must include all your life's bizarre synchronicities and changes and other stuff that really open doors for you. Later revised, this provides priceless insights about your true nature and place in the world. Practice self-sufficiency. Pretty self-explanatory, that's also about 2 things. A. Learning and doing as much stuff as possible on your own, so you can depend less and less on people, services and corporations. And B. Doing the former, while not forgetting this brilliant wisdom gem. Page 35, quote, "In an age of dependency, the antinomian action is independence," unquote. Do a yearly inventory, including observation and accurate recognition of your progress compared to others wasting their lives. And reminding of Napoleon Hill's advice to take inventory of your intangible assets. This method starts with evaluating your place in all areas of your life, celebrating your successes, and forgiving your failures. Then it removes not just grudges to possibly hold against anyone, but also toxic people from your life, adjusting the group that belongs to it. Immensely improving life quality, doing this grants a clear perspective for 2 kinds of people. A. Your actual loved ones, friends and allies to bless, and B. Your threatening enemies to curse. There are rituals provided for both purposes. Lastly, the same section advises examining your life from the perspective of your magical unfoldment, possibly recognizing repeating patterns. Page 36, quote, "Finding those patterns is finding your true you. Learn how the wheel feels and resolve to let it have more of a voice in planning next year. Discover your roots. Reminding me some teachings of Dion Fortune, this one exemplifies a 5-stage process for getting acquainted with your roots. It also covers the value of knowing where your genes come from, and it includes something I believe anyone should consider. Page 37, quote, "Your physical inheritance is your biggest and best tool for self-development. The need to know yourself, your limits, and your possible skills begins with knowing your body," unquote. Resonating with some of the covered in chapter 1, this also adds to a piece of wisdom I learned from Dr. Christopher Hart's interviews. Paraphrasing, your true you really is your genetic predisposition. Discover your vocation. This task is about becoming well acquainted with your destination. Starting with a thorough examination of your local area/neighborhood, it proceeds with getting familiar with the local subcultures, politics, and any magical lore or practices to possibly exist in the area. Page 39. Quote, "All of your region is a magical labyrinth for your benefit. Remember this and practice it," unquote. Join a school. Comparing 3 levels of human effort, this advises joining a school. Besides some of the benefits of doing so, the section also addresses one of the reasons why many people wouldn't join a school. Learn to sing and tell jokes. Frequent hardships and ordeals caused many people to build some of a character wall or armor standing between them and the world. Apart from preventing the free flow of magic, this also stops external forces from stimulating and nurturing one's sovereignty. To fix the issue, Webb advises fully trusting yourself and in a sense owning/being perfectly comfortable with who you are. To achieve that, the author recommends eliminating the stiffness with the aid of singing and telling jokes. Alleviating anxiety and charming people, humor as written reminds us of the world's chaotic nature and can gain us friends and or deflect anger. Learn philosophy. Page 41. Quote, "The left-hand path initiate studies philosophy so that he or she can articulate both for him or herself as well as for others what he or she knows and what he or she holds true and by what standards. Philosophy is the best tool for acquiring meaning. Only when you can express your own ideas without reference to magical systems and exotic words can you be said that you have mastered the path," unquote. Emphasizing the importance of studying philosophy, logic, and epistemology, Webb reveals that merely reading such texts isn't enough. An actually good understanding requires both discussing and writing on those. He also recommends the works of Plato, Nietzsche, and others. Warren psychological system. Similar to Regardi, emphasizing the benefits of Jungian psychoanalysis for magicians in the Middle Pillar book, Webb advocates warning a peculiar psychological system. Regarding psychology as the study of, quote, the clay you're working with, unquote, which is your mind, he offers one not encouraging the victim mentality, i.e. explaining all of one's issues with childhood traumas, but rather one to recognize those while emphasizing positive self-change. While the two examples given are those of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi and Roberto Azzagoli, I believe that Carl Rogers' self-actualization might be a good option too. Do the grant initiation. Here the book prescribes that to really get the most out of it, you should first succeed with its practices and then embark on the grant initiation, filling the entire chapter 3. What this does is ensuring a proper activation of all the book's concepts within the psyche. Plan for your retirement, emphasizing self-worth significance for both healthy life and as a fuel for personal development. This section goes far beyond saving money for your retirement. It also discusses how on the left-hand path, estate planning is just as crucial as learning rituals. Next, it stresses controlling your temper and building loyal, life-lasting relationships with friends and allies. Equally inspiring is the advice to create or put something in motion to continue after leaving this world. Whether that's magical jewelry for your disciples or an organization carrying a name and legacy, the same should proceed after your death. Practice an art. Page 43. Quote, play an instrument, sculpt, write poetry, landscape something. In artistic creation, a moment comes when the artists feel as though they are one with their instrument and the work of art they are creating. Unquote. Producing a potent magical effect, practicing an art form is regarded as a genuine experience of godhood despite one's skill level. Moreover, it furthers one's initiation and is regarded by Nietzsche as proper expression and will to power to the world. Unlike DJ Kubert, however, the best scratch DJ to ever live, Webb doesn't define playing an instrument as becoming one with the universe, and neither as being played by it as one. Page 43. Quote, this is not an union with the universe. It is the moment that you are actually acting on the universe without the opinion of yourself that is part of your medial level being in the way. Unquote. While this basically means that your ego stops interfering, I guess it really isn't by chance that so many great magicians are also artists, poets, and musicians. Some examples include Von Mayo Duquette, Aleister Crowley, Rodney Orpheus, the earlier mentioned James Kirby, Chick Cicero, and Austin Osman's pair. Master the World Wide Web. This has two main focuses. The first is learning how to distinguish the actually valuable from the crap on the internet. The second, to avoid beefing with keyboard warriors and trolls. By accomplishing this, we automatically get access to the world's most excellent libraries and sources of information. Calling the web a manifestation of the world's medial level and part of its nervous system, the author also notes the internet's utility for connecting people and finding proper associates. Go on pilgrimages. Page 43. Quote, we work better upon the galling limitations of time and space when we know that we are in part and potential not wholly native to the mechanistic cosmos. One of the best ways to remind ourselves of this is travel. Unquote. Whether to spiritual significance possessing exotic places, your hometown, or areas in your country, going on trips appears beneficial for enriching life experience and is regarded as a play on the left-hand path. Stand up for the path. Page 44. Quote, there is a basic magical principle that if you want your magic to work, you have to affirm it. This is especially true of the left-hand path. Affirming it is always an act of antinomianism that helps break the fetters that bind you to the herd mentality. Unquote. With this, the author offers that educating and helping people break free from common misconceptions about the left-hand path and perhaps the occult in general augments your practice's effectiveness. Guiding principles behind the left-hand path. While in more traditional systems, higher adepts display a possession of power and skill that a beginner starts craving/admiring, Webb reveals that the same isn't true for the left-hand path. Quite interesting, this shows that though some left-hand path enthusiasts tend to have an affinity for liking the left-hand path to Star Wars Sith philosophy, particularly to the Rule of Two, where the master embodies the power and the student craves it, that not necessarily resonates with reality. Page 44, quote, in the left-hand path, it is necessary to experience your own miracles first so that you can trust that you have powers and potentials that simply aren't at your command. Your desires to have these things at your command will pull you along the path, and the fact that sometimes you have such abilities and sometimes not will teach you a great lesson. That you are as mysterious as anything else in the cosmos." Unquote. One of the things this basically means is that the only power there is to crave or admire is that of your own self. Honesty. Adding to some of the set in Chapter 1, this teaches achieving the difficult task of eliminating any assumptions or untruths one consciously or unconsciously keeps feeding their minds with in order to sustain such and such perception of their own selves. Only through brutal honesty and asking serious of uncomfortable questions can one get the truth about what exactly to work on to efficiently self-actualize. Forgiveness. Applicable to both magic and life, this one is all about humbly accepting the possibility of failing or taking a loss. Whatever the case, that shouldn't become an excuse for beating yourself up. Instead, it must be acknowledged as a golden opportunity to exercise forgiveness and self-love. Growth. In a nutshell, this is all about understanding that growth really isn't linear. While some of the provided exercises may appear like a piece of cake, others may seem more difficult or vice versa. The key is to never stop striving, attempting more and more challenging tasks as you progress. Page 45. Quote, "True self-change occurs by upping the ante each month, each year, each decade." Unquote. Artistry. To prevent boredom and fear of the outlined exercises, this one exemplifies how to practice unconventionally, doing things out of the box. Summing up some of the already given instructions, that's by incorporating exciting trips and activities, doing art, and meeting people with similar paths. Said differently, it's by living a genuinely compelling life while really embedding your magical work in it. Extraction. Page 46. Quote, "The practice of the left-hand path is one of extracting the essences and structures of phenomena within and beyond oneself and working directly upon them. This will to knowledge evolves in many areas but slowly pervades one's life." Unquote. Involving the discovery of what's actually true and real, basically vaporizing common delusions. Through this, one eventually starts getting a strong and accurate sense of how everything operates, i.e. of the mechanics of life. Developed as an organ, that sense doesn't only grant power and knowledge. Moreover, it allows deriving the very essence from any situation and activity. And this ability, I believe, is part of the examined in Chapter 1 perception. Chapter 3. The Grand Initiation. Being the culmination of the whole book, this chapter contains a sophisticated initiatory rite sequencing in 7 stages. Requiring basic paraphernalia, those procedures follow an identical structure and have similar segments. The last include day and night taking phrases, thoroughly depicting one's results and impressions in one's diary, deeply mindful questions to meditate on, actual rituals, daily tasks, and profoundly philosophical essays to definitely consider, even if not following this path or agreeing with everything written. Incorporating elements from various traditions, this ceremony is defined as producing results identical to those of the sacred magic of Abramelin the Mage, most commonly known as the Abramelin operation, which is to become one with your holy guardian angel or demonic self. Unlike more standard, however, Webb's approach doesn't require living like a hermit. Instead, the author actively engages the initiate's daily life and even acquaintances. That being through various tasks, actually including meeting with people and visiting exciting places. After the last stage where the AGAC invocation takes place, Chapter 3 finishes with a piece of wisdom I believe all occult students should never forget. Page 94. Quote, "You may copy out ideas from your diary for other magicians, but do not let them read it while you live. After your death, you should weave it along your magical estate to another magician and then they can read it. It will be a special boost for them, as well as giving you power to act in this world, if you desire." Unquote. Supposedly, this can be seen as perceiving your journals as some of a holocron you create. Chapter 4. Resources. Divided into 5, Chapter 4 starts with a lesson that's a very moving story, perfectly depicting how awakening one's latent abilities always starts with first recognizing one's already present resources. These 3 pages teach a lot about life, epic transformations, magic and its actual results, and self-image. Whether they convey the actual story of the life's author and him, I really don't know. What I do know, however, is that the story can definitely make a compelling movie many occultists would gladly watch. As second, Chapter 4 offers a 3-dice oracle to help to get guiding answers for any situation. Then it jumps to Uncle Setnakt's FAQ, answering questions many are likely burning to ask. Among those are why not everybody follows the left-hand path, whether the left-hand path is Satanism, whether magic is required for initiation, and does being a ward of the left-hand path give a permission to become a jerk and do all sorts of crap. Next is a list of movies, books and tapes to foster your magic and self-improvement by furthering your studies and understanding. After some background on the Temple of Set as a new Platonic organization and how it differs from most left-hand path orders, Chapter 4 gets into some basics of Setian philosophy. Through this, the author explains why Setians believe in being and desire as opposed to nothingness like Buddhists. Page 106, quote, "We see being is knowing. The ethical imperative is to further permanence of the self by embracing the pleasures and pains of existence. We exalt and revel in the disharmony our desire brings. We accept the pains that come from trying to make our dreams come true. We realize that the absolute responsibility for our actions is our own." Unquote. Page 107, quote, "The Temple of Set views life as the process of the psyche coming to know its own existence and to expand that existence in as many realms as are open to it." Unquote. Page 108, quote, "We see Satanism not so much as getting humanity to accept a guy with a pair of horns, but to accept their own forgotten, better natures. And the method that lets people find this remembering is through antinomianism. Not merely rejecting the spiritual traditions of our society, but critically rejecting most of society's programming methods from advertising to superstition. The mission of the Temple of Set is to recreate a tradition of self-deification that was once respected by the wise, as it can be seen in Plato's Symposium." Unquote. Greatly matching with some teachings of Dr. Christopher Hart and Robert Anton Wilson, this proceeds with more about Set's origin as an Egyptian deity, antinomianism, urban folklore, and another story depicting how an initiate of this nature progresses on her path. After all this, Uncle Setnakt kindly appreciates all his readers, and then the book ends. Final words. Saturated with profound wisdom, practicality, and lots of answers and information, Uncle Setnakt's Essential Guide to the Left-Hand Path is a Gnostic gem any true seeker should obtain. Written for intelligent and emotionally stable adults, the book goes far beyond ritual techniques and theory. To me, it's not just a magical, but also a very high-quality personal development book. Providing tools for reaching one's full potential, Webb masterfully inspires to search deeply within, re-examining your life story, genes, and self. Not intended to replace your thinking, the book encourages living life to the fullest, actively making it part of your magic, as you make magic part of your life. Apart from granting another perspective on, or perhaps even a layer of understanding of concepts you're already studying and dealing with, it helps optimize your life on so many levels. I believe it can also help comprehend more sophisticated books on the left-hand path, such as Dr. Michael Aquino's Mindstar. Incorporating magic and philosophy, it takes you on your own quest for sovereignty and the Grail, and while the author warns it won't make you a better person, I believe you should definitely get a copy, despite the path you follow. Now, as you can hopefully tell, regardless of what it's about, I put a lot of time and effort into my content. If you appreciate that, I strongly suggest subscribing to my YouTube channel, commenting and hitting the like button for the algorithm, and perhaps purchasing my book after watching its book summary video. Thank you for your time.